Hello and welcome to another edition of Gttv News Bulletin on a beautiful Friday, and I'm your presenter Lamin Job. We begin with the headlines. President Adama Barrow has called on Gambians to unite despite their political differences as he delivered his 2023 Christmas message. The former Minister of Interior and leader for the opposition Gambian Moral Congress, Ahmed Fati, breaks silence after hibernation. Israel has warned Hezbollah and Lebanon over border fighting. A teenage boy was killed in Australia by a shark. Colorado Republicans appeal against Donald Trump's 2024 ballot ban. Liberia fuel tanker explosion has killed more than 40 people. Well, those are the main headlines. Now let's take a break, and when we come back, we bring you the news in details. In his Christmas speech to the nation, the Gambian President Adama Barrow has renewed his administration's determination to nurture rule of law and good governance in paving way to development and safeguarding religious freedom and tolerance enshrined in the country's constitution. Senabu Juf reports.
Gambian leader Adama Barrow has again renewed his government commitment in good governance and rule of law in the country, in a bid to reap development for the country. In his Christmas message to the nation, Barrow urged Gambians to remain unified and development-oriented despite their political and ethnic-cultural differences in order to keep the country peaceful and developed.
In addition, political differences, ethnicity, and other divides must not tempt anyone to become counterproductive, subversive, or pose as anti-government agents.
According to him, his government is determined to protect religious freedom and serene in the country's constitution in order to register everlasting peace and stability, while urging Gambians to continue their interfaith dialogue to nurture religious tolerance. He renewed assurance of good governance and rule of law in order to pave way for sustainable development in the country.
My government is determined to protect religious freedom within the context of the Constitution and our democratic arrangements. I assure you of good governance, respect for the rule of law, and regard for the basic rights of every citizen. Furthermore, I assure you of inclusive development and participation in the affairs of the country.
Reporting for Gttv News, I am Senabu Juf.
From State House to Koto, where the opposition leader of Gambia Moral Congress, Ahmed Fati, has emerged from a hiatus of political hibernation to tell reporters during a press conference held at his Koto residence that despite the country's parliament passing the anti-corruption bill into a law, that the country has a long way to eliminate corruption, especially within the civil service. The former Interior Minister outlined that one of the country's main problems is implementing laws despite having some very good laws in place. I was among a group of journalists covering the press. Let's take a listen. Ahmed Fati has ended his long silence in the political space as he delved into issues concerning the country during a press conference at his Koto residence. Fati told reporters that despite the passing of the anti-corruption bill, the government has little or no chance of winning the fight against corruption under the current civil service.
This is not the civil service I want to rely on. With all due respect to the good ones there, this civil service needs to totally revamp the entire civil service. Otherwise, the fight against corruption will not work. That's what I need to say. We need a serious reform of the civil service. Serious reform. But I am convinced that the setup and the structure of the current civil service is not up. It's not up for fighting corruption. It's not. We need a real civil service reform and a real political will.
The former political advisor to President Adama Barrow continued to say that despite the country having some good laws, but added that implementation is a major stumbling block to executing those laws. According to him, in order for the country to earn victory over corruption, the civil service needs to be reformed and some laws repealed.
The issue is implementation. Like most things Gambian, whether the law will be implemented. The Gambia has some of the best laws in the world, in the whole world. The best laws in the whole world. And we have some of the best policies. They don't work. You know why? Because we are not committed to implementing them.
The loyal politician promised to make Gambia corruption-free country if he is elected in power.
Because corruption, when you fight corruption, corruption fights you back. So you must be willing. You must be willing and strong enough, the political will to do so. I know I'll be able to fight corruption in this country. I know. If given the opportunity, I will.
Reporting for Gttv News, I am Mudlamin Job.
Well, that news takes us to our first commercial break, and when we come back, we bring you the international news. Welcome back. Now let's shift our attention to the international scene. An Israeli minister, Benny Gantz, said the military would intervene if militants do not stop firing on northern Israel, adding that time for a diplomatic solution is running out. Meanwhile, the head of the Israel Defense Forces said troops were in very high readiness for more fighting, and the North cross-border exchange of firing has been escalating since Hamas' 7th October attack on Israel. Here is an excerpt.
On Wednesday, Hezbollah launched its highest number of cross-border attacks in a day since 8 October, security sources told Reuters. It has led to concerns that conflict in Gaza could become wider across the region. Mr. Gantz told a press conference on Wednesday night that situation on Israeli northern border demands change, adding that the stopwatch for a diplomatic solution is running out. If the world and the Lebanese governments don't act in order to prevent the firing on Israel's northern residents and to distance Hezbollah from the border, the IDF will do it. Hezbollah, a Shia Muslim organization, is designated a terrorist organization by Western states, Israel, Gulf Arab countries, and the Arab League. Funded by Iran, it is one of the most heavily armed non-state military forces in the world. In 2006, a full-blown war between Hezbollah and Israel was triggered when Hezbollah carried out a deadly cross-border raid with Israeli troops invading southern Lebanon. At the border, there has been an increased rocket fire and the use of weaponized drones by Hezbollah this week, with Israeli warplanes quick to respond. State media in Lebanon reported on Wednesday that a Hezbollah fighter and two of his relatives had been killed in an Israeli airstrike. The attack reportedly hit a house in Ben Jabil, a town about 2 kilometers (1.2 miles) from the border with Israel. A Hezbollah statement said one of the victims, Ibrahim Bazi, was an Australian citizen who was visiting his family. More than 100 people have been killed in Lebanon since October, most of them Hezbollah fighters, but civilians, including 3 journalists, are also among the dead. On the Israeli side, at least 4 civilians and 9 soldiers are known to have died on the Lebanon border since hostilities began. Thousands of civilians living in dozens of communities in the area have been evacuated by the army. Hezbollah's leadership praised the unprecedented cross-border attack launched by Hamas gunmen on southern Israel on 7th October, in which at least 1,200 people were killed, most of them civilians, and about 240 others were taken hostage. More than 21,100 people have been killed in Gaza, mostly children and women, during 11 weeks of fighting, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Thousands of Palestinian families in Gaza are trying to find shelter as Israel broadens its ground offensive across the center and southern territory. Thousands of Palestinian families in Gaza are trying to find shelter as Israel broadens its ground offensive across the center and south of the territory. Reporting for Gttv News, I am Mudlamin Job.
A teenage boy has been killed in a sack attack at a popular holiday and surfing spot in South Australia. Police have said the body was recovered from the water after the attack near Ethel Beach in the Innes National Park on the York Peninsula, officers said. Aisha Tikoli reports.
A local resident told ABC News that Thursday's attack was the first fatal one at the resort that he was aware of. The attack is the latest of several in South Australian waters recently. In a statement, South Australian police said its officers were first alerted about the attack on Thursday at 13:30 local time. Police said in a statement that the body of a teenage boy was recovered from the water. The force, which did not give the age of the teenager said officers were preparing a report for the coroner. Athol Beach is a 400 meters long stretch of sandy surf beach, popular with surfers and tourists, with waves averaging 1.5 meters. Local resident Matthew Gttv, who has been surfing in the area for decades, told ABC News that he estimated that the victim may have been about 30 to 40 meters off the shore. He said the area had always had sharks, but there does seem to be a lot more of them now. The shark attack is the latest of several in South Australian waters in recent months. In May, a surfer was killed off the Eyre Peninsula, and in February, a girl was mauled by a shark in a river in Perth, the capital of Western Australia. Australia has more shark attacks than any other country except the US. Scientists have cautioned that an increase in shark sightings does not necessarily mean an increase. Aissatou Koli, Gambian Talents TV News.
Colorado Republicans have appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court after the state's top court ruled that Donald J. Trump was ineligible to run for president. The appeal means he will remain for now on the ballot for the Colorado primary. Last week, the ex-president was disqualified from running in the state for his alleged role in the 6 January 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Let's take a look.
Mr. Trump is the Republican frontrunner and is expected to be the party's candidate for the 2024 U.S. election. In its appeal, the Colorado Republican Party's legal team accused the state Supreme Court of fundamentally changing the course of American democracy. They added that the decision would distort the 2024 presidential election and would mere court henceforth in political controversies over nebulous accusations of insurrection. Colorado is the only U.S. state to strike Mr. Trump from the ballot under a U.S. constitutional clause called the 14th Amendment, prohibiting anyone engaging in insurrection or rebellion from holding public office. This was the first time this provision has ever been used since it was introduced after the American Civil War. The state's top court found last week that the former president had incited an insurrection when the Capitol was stormed by his supporters. Mr. Trump has repeatedly denied responsibility for the riots. The ruling directed the Colorado Secretary of State to exclude Mr. Trump from the state Republican primary on March 5th, but it does not stop Mr. Trump from running in other states. Similar lawsuits to remove the Republican frontrunner from the ballot in Minnesota, New Hampshire, and Michigan have failed. It is unclear when the U.S. Supreme Court will consider the case and make it a decision. What it decided will probably apply nationwide. Mr. Trump's team are also expected to appeal against the Colorado ruling. The primary election are the state-by-state search by each party for a presidential nominee. Donald Trump's campaign to win the Republican nomination will be complicated by a series of criminal trials in 2024 as he runs again for the White House. He denies all the charges and says the justice system have been weaponized to stop him becoming president. Ndekor reporting for Gttv News.
More than 40 people have died after a fuel tanker crashed and exploded in central Liberia. The country's chief medical officer, Francis Kate, has said the tanker overturned along a road in Torora town, about 130 kilometers, 80 miles from the capital, Monrovia. Adama Makasuba reports.
Eyewitnesses said that it burst into flames soon after people rushed to the site to scoop fuel from the tanker. A pregnant woman was among the dead and some of the bodies were burned to ashes. Dr. Kate, Liberia's medical chief officer, has told a local television station that more than 83 people had been admitted to hospital for their injuries following Tuesday's disaster. He added that patients with more serious injuries had been transferred to hospitals in Monrovia for treatment. The cause of the crash is unclear. A video footage shows that a large number of people, including children, had gathered around the tanker after it overturned. Some had buckets and jerry cans, and others were on top of the tanker when it burst into flame. Liberia's President George Weah has expressed his condolences to the families of the dead, saying he found images of the tragedy deeply disturbing. Mr. Weah has given the health authorities his full backing to beef up manpower and equipment where necessary in their frantic effort to save life.
Well, that brings us to the end of this news bulletin. But before we take a leave of you, let's look at the main stories once again. President Adama Barrow has called on Gambians to unite despite their political differences as he delivered his 2023 Christmas message. The former Minister of Interior and leader for the opposition Gambian Moral Congress, Ahmed Fati, breaks silence after hibernation. Israel has warned Hezbollah and Lebanon over border fighting. A teenage boy was killed in Australia by a shark. Colorado Republicans appeal against Donald Trump's 2024 ballot ban. Liberia fuel tanker explosion has killed more than 40 people. Well, that's all we got for you in our tonight's bulletin. Until then, a season compliments to you, and do have a pleasant weekend and a happiest new year in advance. Bye-bye from me.